Alright, so moving on here, we have the second game, Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. I had heard a while back that supposedly the name Ripto came from seeing how Spyro was written out on the Japanese release of the original game, but I couldn't really find anything to confirm that. Anywho, Ripto's Rage is a sequel that certainly changed a few things up, and from what I can tell, it seems to be a bit of a fan favorite. Well, why don't we get into this game and have our little Spyro adventure continue? On one rainy day in the Dragon Realm, Spyro and Sparks decide they want to head to Dragon Shores to enjoy some sunshine and warm weather. However, after going through the portal, Spyro ends up finding himself in a different world called Avalar. It turns out that a few of the residents of Avalar were using a portal to try and summon a dragon to help them get rid of an unexpected villain named Ripto. The little monster here wants to take over Avalar after accidentally being brought to the world, and it turns out that Ripto hates dragons. So seeing that Avalar could use his help, Spyro decides to stay and save the world, and hopefully get to Dragon Shores in the end. It's a decent setup, and I like these new characters you meet. Alora is quite proactive in trying to help her world, the professor is well-meaning but a bit odd, and Hunter can be helpful and likable most of the time. Ripto himself is a very memorable villain, being over the top at times and acting like a jerk. It just doesn't feel like he's the one causing the problems in the world of Avalar, as when interacting with the other characters, it seems more to be local issues that they're dealing with. Speaking of which, you get to meet quite the colorful cast of characters in each of the worlds, and in the end, I felt very satisfied when I'd helped them out. Plus, Spyro himself is a really likable character. He's confident without being cocky, and the few interactions he has with other characters I find to be likable. So yeah, I like the story a lot, even if there are a few oddly paced cutscenes from time to time. But finally beating Ripto in the end is rather rewarding. Before we begin, I should mention that I accidentally started a glitch while recording footage. I was showing off unlocking the super breath at the end of the game and then started up a new file to present the first 20 minutes of the adventure, which means you'll be seeing Spyro with the super breath when he shouldn't have it. My bad. Okay, so much like the previous game, Ripto's Rage is a 3D collectathon platformer. Once again, Spyro can charge, glide, and blow fire. Though Spyro's glide has been changed some. Instead of dropping like a rock when you hit the triangle button, Spyro now has this hover that gives him a little extra height and distance at the end of a glide, making long distance glides much more palatable, and I think it's a good addition. Spyro can also now hold objects in his mouth and then spit them out, and it's useful whether you're doing it to help out a resident or if you're taking out enemies, but it's never used too much. Hub areas return. There are only 3, but they are still fun to explore and do a good job at getting you used to the controls and how Spyro plays. Plus, there are no enemies in them, so they are very safe places for the player to run around in. Just be careful of a few bottomless pits in the later 2 hub areas. Progression, however, works a little differently. First off, there are 3 main collectibles in the game, and they each kinda serve a different purpose. To begin with, we have gems, which are found just about everywhere, and are still really satisfying to collect. And the main reason to collect them is to get past Moneybags. Moneybags is a super annoying bear who constantly asks for gems and acts like a roadblock. Sometimes you need to give him gems so he'll open a bridge in a level for you, or he won't give you access to a level until you pay him, or you'll need to trade gems with him in order to learn Spyro's new moves. Yeah, Spyro can learn some new skills in this game. First off, he can now swim, and it's actually fun. Spyro controls well underwater, as it's kept simple but still fast, and you don't have to worry about an oxygen meter. So yeah, it's a good skill. Spyro will also learn to climb ladders, and this head bash move used to break specific objects. Once you get these new skills, you'll have to return to certain levels that you couldn't fully complete before, but it's so few that it doesn't bother me. So collect every gem you see and do a little exploring, and you won't have to worry about paying Moneybags so much. But if you're trying to complete levels and are missing a few gems, well, good news, Sparks gets his own new ability. By pressing all the back L and R buttons, Sparks will point you in the direction of where there are some remaining gems. Oh yeah, Sparks once again acts as Spyro's health, and now he'll eat butterflies whenever, even if you're at full health. Yeah, I forgot to mention that in the last review, but Sparks recovers health by eating butterflies that pop out after killing these small little critters. Kill enough of them and they'll eventually drop a special butterfly that will give you an extra life that fully heals Sparks. So yeah, it's real easy to get extra lives in this game. The next collectible are talismans. These are super easy to get, as all you have to do is reach the other end of the level where a resident will be waiting for you and who will open the exit portal. Talismans are needed to get past the first two bosses and to reach the final hub area. And finally, we have orbs. These can be found lying around in hub areas, but in the levels themselves, you'll have to complete a mission before earning an orb. This takes us to one of the biggest changes in the game compared to the previous one. Levels are once again accessible through the hub worlds, and I would say these levels feel a lot more open. Sure, there is kind of a linear path to take to reach the exit portal, but these levels reward you so much for exploring and have lots of nooks and crannies to look around in. On top of that, a lot of the levels loop back to the beginning, or offer easier ways to reach different sections of the level. This more open style with the levels is one of my favorite parts of the game, as I like exploring levels and getting myself absorbed in them. Again, a few of the levels are a bit more linear, like Idle Springs and Metropolis, but even they still offer some exploration. Should you find yourself getting lost, there is a map option, but I personally never found this necessary. Within levels, you can find residents, who help make these worlds feel more lived in, and this is what I would consider to be the biggest change in the levels from the original game. Not only do these residents give context to why their world is in trouble, but they also will give Spyro missions. These missions will range quite a bit in what you'll have to do. Some require you to swim through rings on a manta ray, save some turtles from becoming soup, fight off a ball on ice, take out some bugs bothering a farmer, or finding golden bones scattered throughout a level. I would say that most of these are enjoyable, or at the very least aren't too intrusive. Some will reward you more for exploring a level, and others will have you fulfilling simple tasks that don't stray too far from Spyro's typical controls, which I prefer. Some missions I personally enjoy would be the trade mission with the professor, trouble with the trolley, the glide challenges in Hurricos, and reuniting Romeo and Juliet. While I'm not a huge fan of missions like this Crystal Popcorn game Hunter has you play, thankfully, if you're not fully completing the game, then you can just play missions you find fun or easy, and should do fine, as the orbs you earn unlock specific levels, and only so many are needed to reach the final boss. If you do plan on fully completing levels, this game has a nice touch where you get a jingle and a notice once you've collected everything. Not only that, but now flight stages are called speedway stages, and once again you fly around trying to clear out all the objects before the time runs out. But if you explore these levels, you can find an NPC who also gives you a special mission. So speedway levels are still great for earning gems, but also have an orb to earn on top of that. As you defeat enemies, you'll notice a spirit-looking object flying away and this number increasing. This is because of special power-ups found in levels that require you to first defeat so many enemies before you can access them. Power-ups will range from things like Super Breath, Supercharge, or Springs that launch you up to higher areas, all of which are fun to use and are needed for certain missions. I would also like to mention skill points. These are just hidden objectives that you can do, like destroying all the plants in a level. Doing these will unlock an epilogue, and it's neat to look through, but I don't really go for these. Bosses are actually a threat this time around. Sure, the first boss is super easy, and the second one's not too bad, but at least they feel like legitimate bosses this time. The final boss is definitely quite the challenge, and will probably cost you the most lives with how long it is, which makes it satisfying when you finally beat him. If you manage to collect 8,000 gems and 55 orbs, you'll gain access to Dragon Shores at the end of the game. Here you get to play some mini games and get access to a theater, and it's a fun, charming little reward. But if you manage to collect every orb and gem, then you get access to a permanent Super Breath, which is super fun to use and helpful if you're trying to complete all the skill points. Ripto's Rage is quite the improvement in its visuals compared to the first game. Character models feel more smoothed out and detailed, plus the more specific textures really help make the characters and environments stand out more. Colors are vibrant and are used very well for each world, with only a few feeling a bit dull, and there are a few nice small details in the areas like leaves falling from trees. You'll get to visit many unique worlds, like the harbor with flying ships, a mine full of colorful gems, a prehistoric land, and a robotic farm. One thing I forgot to mention in the previous review was the amount of unique enemies for each world, which can be said about this game too. Not only is it impressive to see so many different designs and enemy types, but it also helps make each world stand out more, including including the inhabitants of the worlds, which help give them extra personality. And once again, we have nice animations that make everything feel more alive. A charming little touch to this game are these intro and outro cutscenes that play at the beginning and end of each world. At first, they show you a bit of the world and a hint to what issue the inhabitants are dealing with, and at the end, how you had helped improve the situation. Again, a really charming touch that helps give these worlds more personality, and I just love it. The voice acting has improved, with Spyro now being voiced by Tom Kenny, who I think does a really good job, and is by far my favorite voice actor for the character. Music is once again composed by Stuart Copeland, and there is some really nice variety here. I love the dreamlike quality of the hub world themes, the slight winter feel of Crystal Glacier, the mysticism of Colossus, and the joyfulness of Scorch. Basically, the soundtrack is really good and is worth listening to. In the end, I still love this game. Avlar is a fun world to explore and get lost in. There are plenty of likable and memorable characters. The story feels rewarding to complete, Spyro's new abilities are fun to use, and overall the game is a welcoming and entertaining 3D collectathon platformer. I would definitely recommend this game to those who enjoy platformers and collectathons. Plus, the game isn't too difficult with only some challenge, but I think that's kinda needed. I also genuinely have fun fully completing this game. Even if I don't enjoy all the missions, I still find the journey satisfying. It's just not the same type of satisfaction as when I complete the original. I have a very hard time choosing which one I enjoy more when it comes to these two games, as I think they each have different strengths and weaknesses. Well, we'll be finishing things off with Year the Dragon next time, so see you then when our adventure continues.